Aloha and welcome. I'd like to first begin with the land acknowledgement. It is with profound reflection that we offer up this land acknowledgement, acknowledging Hawaii as an indigenous space whose original people are today identified as Native Hawaiians. The Hawaii Public Health Association aligns with the American Public Health Association's commitment to improve the health of the public and achieve equity in health status. It is with much aloha that I, Dr. Kamania Gramtut, President of the Hawaii Public Health Association, offer up this land acknowledgement to welcome all gathered in this aina. Aloha again. My name is Dr. Kamania Gramtut, President of the Hawaii Public Health Association. I'm also an Associate Professor of Community Health in the Math, Natural, and Health Sciences Division at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu. I'm a lifetime member of the Hawaii Public Health Association, and although she might not say it, I'm a hardworking mommy. The Hawaii Public Health Association, established in 1945, is an affiliate of the American Public Health Association. APHA, as it is coined, has been influencing policies and setting priorities in public health since 1872. These include national efforts to prevent disease and promote health. Our local affiliate works to protect and promote personal, community, and environmental health in the Pacific. The purpose of today's event is to celebrate National Public Health Week. National Public Health Week is an opportunity for health professionals, organizations, individuals, and communities to engage and navigate the changing world of public health. The theme of the National Public Health Week this year is a theme that's one and the same for APHA, centering and celebrating cultures in health. Today, we hope to share conversations about the intersections of public health and how the public health can collaborate and learn from community leaders to build trust and a strong foundation for health equity. Today, you'll hear from a diverse set of speakers with an array of backgrounds I've heard in the conversations prior to the start of this meeting, who will be here with you to share the importance of centering and celebrating culture in health. Before I go, I'd like to share that we're thankful for our event sponsors. Next slide, please. Aloha Care, John A. Burns School of Medicine, Chaminade University, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, Hawaii Public Health Institute, Hawaii Pacific University, Papa'oloka'i, and the UH Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health. As we move on to our next speaker, please let me briefly introduce your moderator or bio introducer for today, our Spring 2023 Hawaii Public Health Association Fellow, Jane Melody Julian. Take it away, Jan.
Hello, my name is Jan Melody Julian. I am currently a HPH student fellow working under Dr. Smithson from HPU. A little about me growing up, I have always been interested in assisting and providing support for people, which interested me into healthcare. From helping my mother with her care home to job experiences as CNA and patient assistant working, I've worked with different generations, especially with the elderly population. Currently, I am also an intern with Kapuna Collective at Hi-Fi and studying at Chaminade University for my bachelor's in community and public health and a minor in psychology. You. Okay, we will start with our speakers. First, we have two speakers from Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, Raymond Alejo and Kekoa Kealoha. About Raymond Alejo, he is the community registered nurse for the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. A key component of Raymond's role at HHHRC is serving as a community health nurse for people living with HIV on Oahu Island. In addition to the great work Raymond does for the communities living with HIV, as HHHRC's community registered nurse, Raymond also conducts multiple outreach and wound efforts in the community and provides counseling and testing for HIV and hepatitis C services in jails and prisons. And about Kikoa Kealoha, he is the HIV program manager at HHHRC and has been working in HIV care and prevention for nearly 8 years. Having served communities on both Hawaii and Oahu Island, Kikoa understands many of the unique challenges that face Kanaka Maoli in urban, suburban, and rural settings and has actively worked to resolve them. Himself a native Hawaiian, Kikoa passionate about serving Kanaka Maoli communities and creating equitable opportunities for them. Kikoa grew up in Kohala, where he was immersed in his culture and surrounded by people who continue to inspire his work today. So help me please welcome Raymond and Kikoa.
Hi, aloha kākou Pauloa. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk a little bit today about HIV care in Hawaii. And I'm joined today by Raymond. Raymond, do you want to go first or you want me to go first? Okay, I'll start them off. All right, can everyone see the slideshow? I'm hoping that's a yes, thank you. All right, so today I'm gonna walk you through a brief history of Hawaii's colonial past to help contextualize a lot of the issues that we face today. In public health, we often face like direct and indirect impacts of our colonial history. So it is absolutely prudent of us to use our knowledge of this history and to be competent in offering services and care to Kanaka Maoli. I'll talk about the challenges we face as a people, but I'll also offer solutions because I do believe in being solutions driven. So just to begin, this is just kind of a short timeline of events that happened over a period of 119 years, from the years 1778 all the way to 1896, from the time that Captain Cook arrived into Hawaii, all the way to the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, as well as the Hawaiian language ban in schools and public institutions. And these bolded items here are some really pivotal moments in that timeline. So let's walk through those pivotal events. TB and syphilis began the rapid decline in population that we experienced here in Hawaii, followed by other disease events. From 1778 through the year 1840, the Kanaka Maoli population actually declined by 84%. And this 84% population decline in just 62 years. If you can imagine, the year 1961 was 62 years ago. If you can imagine in that time period, if 84% of these islands, of the people in these islands were gone. By the year 1920, 97% of Kanaka Maoli had actually died off. American missionaries introduced Christianity by the year 1820. In that time, Hawaii's population had declined so much that it created significant social instability, which was the pathway for Christian acceptance. Increased missionary presence meant increased American influence, which meant the introduction of American industry and specifically sugar. The sugar industry led American businessmen to involve themselves in Hawaiian government and politics, which drove the Great Mahele, which is a land privatization movement. Because American sugar growers actually lost their privileges in the American market, they at gunpoint forced Kalakaua to sign what became known as the Bayonet Constitution, which stripped the monarch's power and gave voting rights to foreigners and gave the United States control of Pearl Harbor. And then in 1893, American sugar growers overthrew the lawful and peaceful government of the Hawaiian Islands, which led to annexation. So we can really think of colonial history in Hawaii in two major parts, right? The Christian missions, as well as economic capital, which drove real serious political change. Christian missionaries, as they were kind of a sort of a proxy colonial power, and they used religion to enforce gendered rules in all societies, forcing our Mahu population underground. And this colonizing power would eventually influence gender disparities in health outcomes and socioeconomic status that we see today. We also see the the ouster or the marginalization of sexual minorities or people who are seen to have deviated from heteronormativity. And this is a result also of Christianity. Kanaka Maoli sometimes practiced same-sex love and had relationships with multiple partners without any of the stigma that exists today for these types of practices. On the economic side, we see a big shift away from subsistence living into a monoeconomy of growing sugar. And this led to water diversion from natural streams to help feed the plantations. And we continue to see a lot of these impacts today with diversion of water resources and poor management of these resources. Some contemporary examples are, there's currently a fight on Maui about diverting water from their streams away from kalo farmers. Hawaii Island, the same thing is happening as well. And we don't have to look too far, right? We can look at Red Hill and the crisis that's been ongoing there to see really poor management of our water resources. Now, this economic driver, right, diverting water away from subsistence living really drove everybody to kind of put all their eggs in one basket, that basket being sugar growing and plantations here in Hawaii. So diverting water meant people could not live in their ancestral lands. They had to support themselves somehow, driving them to live on plantations where they worked for sugar growers, who really didn't necessarily have the best interests of those people in mind, right? Because it's a business venture. I think it's also important to mention that sugar growers at this time did create a law that was enacted in Hawaiian government law about vagrants. So anybody who was homeless could be arrested and forced to work on plantations for minimal wages. Furthermore, sugar growers also brought in people from China, Japan, the Philippines, and also from Portugal and the Azores Islands. Now, that wasn't enough, right? So what led to the overthrow was actually the loss of a beneficial economic relationship that American sugar growers had growing sugar in Hawaii. That eventually led to the overthrow. I'm not going to go too much into it because time is limited. And as a result, we now live in a colonized world. I put in the initial slide the word post-colonial in quotes because I don't want us to think that we are technically post-colonial. We do still live in a colonial society and with people who have been colonized. And this is really important to understand because when it comes to providing HIV care or any type of healthcare services, we have to be mindful of the history and the power dynamic that exists for Kanaka Maoli and the people who are in power. And I do want to just talk a little bit about the sociology of colonization. This comes from Frantz Fanon's theory of post-colonial theory, talking about relations, right, between people who've been colonized and the colonizing power and what that relationship looks like. A power dynamic exists naturally between that, and the healthcare system can often be seen as an extension of that colonial power. And so we have to recognize for people like us who work in healthcare or in social services and community services, we have a power dynamic that we have to acknowledge and we have to try and work around in order to provide services to our people. When it comes to colonization and the role of the people who have been colonized as well as the agents of a colonial power, there is also the relationship that exists among people who have been colonized. So a person who's been colonized is going to interact differently with an oppressive power than it will with somebody who is experiencing the same thing. And that is where really important programs like Keolopono of ours comes in, and I'm going to jump to that in a little bit. I also do want to talk about what is really significant about this theory is that it creates an inferiority complex for people who've been colonized. And that is something very common here in Hawaii. The people who grew up Hawaiian, we grew up feeling like we weren't good enough. We grew up feeling like our culture was wrong. We were told that our language didn't serve a purpose, that we weren't going to get anywhere. Dancing hula was just for girls. You know, learning Hawaiian language isn't going to help you bring a paycheck home. Well, we know that that's not true. None of that is true. And actually, those things that are cultural pieces actually bring us peace, they bring us growth, and they bring us healing. And so I bring up this history and why it's relevant, really. I want to tie it back to our social determinants of health. And for those of you who are involved in public health, this is very, very normal to you, and this is very normal language. But we have to understand the implications of what happened 150, 120 years ago, right? Because those have implications today. As people who are descended from those who have been displaced, have been marginalized, and have a Wamud, a Kuleana, and for carrying their culture forward and experienced generational trauma, we have a duty to address these different determinants, these different social determinants of health. Social and political, just like I talked about with the overthrow, the overthrow has really specific political and socioeconomic implications for our people today. If it wasn't for the overthrow, well, actually, it's not just the overthrow, right? It's everything that happened leading up to it. It's the displacement, the land displacement. Those all have serious impacts. Access to healthcare, because of where we lived, right? Where we were moved away from our ancestral lands and where we were almost herded, right? This is where we live, and that affects our access to healthcare. Food and housing. Do we have access to food and housing by virtue of who we are, or do we have to work in an economy that is somewhat oppressive in order to access those things? So when we think about gendered health disparities that exist and reflect a colonial past, women being forced into a caregiving role, that is a perfect example of a gendered health disparity. And often women will put the needs of other people first, and that has certainly been our experience here in HIV care. The concept of the male breadwinner, right? So men being expected to go out and work, to keep their emotions tamped down, and to not really address any of those underlying issues. Well, we know, right, after years of doing this work, that tamping down those emotions and ignoring them really doesn't serve us doesn't serve a purpose, right? Anti-trans violence, that is not a cultural value of Kanaka Maoli. We do not value violence against trans people. We value our mahu. Our mahu are held in special regard. Sexual deviance, right? So in the 1980s, when AIDS first emerged as a health crisis in the United States, we really saw the narrative, the social narrative shift, right? And well, not necessarily shift, but you saw messages about homosexuals and how homosexual behavior was immoral, and how that led to the proliferation of HIV and AIDS. That type of stigma is not a cultural value of Kanaka Maoli. We didn't stigmatize people for participating in same-sex love. And so some of the lasting impacts that we have seen from our colonial history and where we are today, right? We see the loss of cultural roles that actually mitigated harmful effects of anti-LGBT bigotry. We are trying to reconcile a history of exploitation and displacement. We're trying to navigate Western systems with distrust because, like I mentioned earlier, right, sometimes the healthcare system is seen as an extension of an oppressive power. And so that makes it really difficult to access healthcare and other community-based services. Another lasting impact is that we've embraced Western norms and indoctrination that Hawaiian culture is useless. Now, along with embracing Western norms comes embracing values that are kind of contrary to our own Hawaiian values, right? And then, of course, generational trauma. But what are some solutions, right? Because we can talk about the problems all day long. We can talk about the issues that happened 120 years ago, but talking about the issues really isn't enough unless we're going to talk about the solutions to them. So some solutions for Kanaka Maoli, for Native Hawaiians, even with this generational trauma and everything that happened in the past, reconnecting with culture and embracing that cultural perspective validates one's gender and sexual expression. Our mahu have a place in our culture. We can acknowledge the history of exploitation and displacement and use that as motivation to improve social circumstances. We can do this through legislation. We can do this through different community activities or take other actions as we see fit as individuals. I cannot drive this point home enough. Have Native Hawaiian representations in your agencies. We need Hawaiian representation in the healthcare system to break through that distrust and to help build relationships with people. Intentional inclusion of cultural practices that affirm deeply rooted identities. This is so important. You know, a lot of times what we consider health and what we consider well-being as Hawaiians, that doesn't translate to numbers on a patient chart, right? So I think what we need to do as healthcare providers or as community service providers is to find the aspects of culture that are healing according to the client or to the patient, and really integrate that as part of a comprehensive care plan for that person. And then lastly, we need to respect cultural boundaries, right? Healthcare providers and people providing services have a duty to respect cultural boundaries of all of their clients. And having the cultural humility and competency to actually perform their duties is incredibly important. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about Keolapono at the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. Now, I've been with H3RC for just a little bit over a year. So I myself have not worked too much in this program. So I want to mahalo my counterpart, Kili Iabordo, who is the other HIV program manager, for really taking the reins to bring this program back. Keolapono is meant to serve Kanaka Maoli, reconnect them to their culture, right? Increase presence in Hawaiian communities of our services, places like Papakolea, Waimanalo, Waianae, you know, places where a large number of Kanaka Maoli still live, so that they see our services, they know we exist, and they feel more comfortable coming to us and talking to us. And this really reduces the stigma among marginalized and disenfranchised people. And just to talk about how profound of an impact a program like this can have. We were just informed by Tim McCormick, who works at the Department of Health in the Harm Reduction Services branch, in our last meeting that in the past, Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiians, and other Pacific Islanders actually were more likely than everybody else to be diagnosed with AIDS at the time of their HIV diagnosis. That is no longer true. And it's really a testament to the effective programs like Keolapono, which have embraced a community perspective and a community effort to really engage Kanaka Maoli and Native Hawaiians in services that are truly meaningful and in ways that are creative and outside the box of normal HIV care. And this is huge. It really speaks to the validity of interventions like this that have a real strong, lasting public health impact. And overall, I do want to add that through the lockdowns and the pandemic lockdowns that started in 2020, here in Hawaii, we were actually able to increase our linkage to HIV care and retention and care above 80%, which is, I believe, higher than the target for or above our targets for those specific years, which tells me that since the start of the HIV/AIDS pandemic and epidemics, that we have made really strong progress in everything that we've done. And I'm really excited to see how we carry that forward. And the last thing for me before I hand it off to Raymond, I do just want to say that Hawaii is not alone. The Pacific jurisdiction, is still experiencing this today, has gone through this as well, and other places in the world. And so I think it's really important that we be mindful of colonial history when we are dealing with Indigenous populations. I do have more resources if you are interested, but other than that, I am finished, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I want to give Raymond some time to also speak about HIV here in Hawaii.
Aloha, my name is Raymond Alejo. I'm the community health nurse for Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction. I'm formerly, I worked with the Life Foundation since the year 2000, I think. I wanted to, thank you so much, Kekoa, for that, because it really just lays the groundwork of where we're starting with HIV, where our history comes from. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we do HIV care here through Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction. And as our name says, we use the harm reduction concepts to really get to our patients. And one of the things I discovered was that Harm reduction in its sense means that we stay parallel with our patients. We stay parallel throughout their whole entire care, in the sense that if they're not ready for their care, we are just parallel with them, and we're in arm's reach, so that when they are ready for care, that we're available ourselves. And I found that one of the things that really came to light at that point was that, a lot of times you hear a lot in the hospitals that they're not ready for, they're not ready for care, and they're not ready, to start, their health, their health journey. Well, I think one of the things that it really did have me question was, are we ready to give that health care or that health journey, or help them through this health journey? And a lot of times I think we need to ask ourselves that question, is that, are we ready to give them health care? Are we ready to give them therapy? As opposed to just asking that question to our patients and our clients. So one of the programs I started here was a program called Ahaola. And Ahaola is a peer support group, and I started in Makaha, Waianae, and Maili. And the reason why I started that was because our patients and our clients there were, we were expecting them to get all their services and all their therapies and everything in town. Their doctor was in town, their mental health practitioner was in town, their case manager was in town. Well, in the early days, before we had, medications that were pretty, pretty easy to take as they are today, there was a lot of side effects from medications, and what we were expecting of our patients and our clients was, sometimes they didn't have any transportation. So what they would have to do is catch the bus. With those medications that were that were given at the time, the side effects of things like diarrhea and nausea and vomiting and other things that were happening with those medications really made it impossible for our patients to even get on that bus and take a 3-hour ride to see their therapist or see their physicians here. So what we did was we started bringing the services there. I noticed that, the people that were coming to this group or support group called Ahaola, were a lot of our Native Hawaiian women. And, as I looked a little bit more, there was several levels or several layers of need. There was childcare. There was, people that, if they needed to go to the doctor, who was going to take care of the kids, or who was going to be there in time for them to meet their kids after school. There was a lot of things like that happened. So this peer support group was developed. Within the peer support group, there's several things that we've done differently. The first thing that we do is we do a pule, or a prayer, to whoever their higher being is. We have a certain way of doing it. We have the way that we hold hands is different. It has meaning to how we do that. In the peer support group, after that, we have what they call kuka, which is just kind of talking things out, and whatever they want to talk about is the subject of the day. If they needed to say something and get it off their chest, they did. But before we start the kuka, we talk about the area that we're in. So we talk about the different history of Nanakuli, what happened, what happened there, what's found there in that aina, the things that we can, the people there that the people from Nanakuli, when they come, they talk about their history as well and how they grew up and what was there when they were growing up. So there's a little bit of an attachment to the land. And the reason why we do that is because for our Native Hawaiian population, they define themselves as this land, where they come from. That's part of the definition of their selves. So we have that, and then we have kuka kuka, which is we talk things out. And then we have me'ai, which is just a lunch. And after the me'ai, if we break up into groups, and one is in this aha'ola, or this support group, we have a set of elders that were chosen. And these are people that have been living with HIV and for a long time. And so for people who are newcomers or people who are new to HIV, they at least have a source of kind of how to live with it. I'm there, so if they need to talk about any medical kind of things with HIV, then people who need to do that can come with me to a separate part of the group and talk about that. And then a lot of times we have maybe a case manager or a peer advocate that can also talk about things. So there's things going on in that group. The group meets at the beach. We don't meet out inside. We don't meet inside of a building. We meet at the beach. We do and after doing all our kuka kuka and talking to elders and talking to case managers, we get back together again, and we do a chant or an oli, a closing oli at the beach, and then we go our separate ways. So this kind of a support group addresses things like where we come from, talking about the area that we are. We talk about the rains, the name of the winds, the different things that come specifically from that region. And it's been really, this has been going on since 2008. And it's been a constant thing. So we started one in Waianae, and now we're starting one in Kaka'ako because people in town wanted something like this too. So there's a lot of things that are going on. It's interesting that we started to kind of veer or venture into more in-depth things. And it took years for us to start talking about things like responsibilities as far as health. We broke it into 3 places. One is kuleana, which is a responsibility, but it's a responsibility that people can have a little bit of leeway. They can kind of walk away from it at times. We talk about koho'ia, which is the chosen responsibility where you cannot walk away from it. It's your responsibility. Then we talk about awamo, which is sort of something that we carry. It's not necessarily a burden, but it's something that we carry. It's a responsibility that we carry. And it took us years to kind of talk about subjects like this for us, for people to trust that they can talk about these kind of things in these kind of circles. So it keeps going, and we really it's something that's unsaid, it's unsung, but I really think that having more. Oh, okay, I just heard I gotta wrap it up. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Raymond. I'm sure everyone will agree with me that we could probably listen to both of you go on and on for this entire session. But I'm also really excited to hear about our other speakers too. But we will be having a group panel Q&A session following these presentations. So if you have any questions for our wonderful panelists, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A. But with that, I will go ahead and pass that virtual mic back over to Jen so she can introduce our next group of speakers here.
Thank you, Amanda. Next, we will have 3 speakers from the Kua Ana Project: Madeline Sese Pasara, Shalani Plasencia, and Madison Muliga. Madeline is a pillar of the transgender community in Hawaii. Through her inspiration and leadership for 20+ years, she has touched many lives by being the guiding light for trans men and trans women to live their authentic truths. As a showgirl and entertainer, Madeline naturally became a leading voice in the LGBTQIA+ community and used her platform to advocate transgender equality. Within the community, she continues to be a role model and mentor for local transgender youth in Hawaii, supporting their growth and helping them navigate life, health, and relationships while making safe choices. Shalani Plasencia has been part of the HHHRC family since 2017, at that time as part of Life Foundation. Shalani, a transgender woman of Hawaiian, Filipino, Russian descent, joined Life Foundation in 2017 as a peer navigator under the Kua Ana Project. Throughout the years, Shalani also participated in the syringe exchange outreach and HIV testing programs, and she has helped her trans brothers and sisters obtain name changes and gender markers. She has also helped with hygiene, transportation, and referrals to housing opportunities. Shalani has helped her work to HIV awareness and reducing the stigma of HIV in her community. And Madison Muliga brings a fresh new perspective to the Kua Ana Project and the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center through her personal lived experiences and now professional journey. Madison is a Samoan American trans woman who works closely with other service providers to end overdose and serve our drug using and stigmatized and underserved communities. As a new addition to the Kua Ana Project, she hopes to provide adequate and inclusive services for the transgender communities through advocacy, outreach, and support services. She can navigate her clients through many systematic resources, including one-on-one needle exchange, transgender social services, overdose prevention, housing navigation, and crisis intervention. Her mission to ensure that all transgender individuals have a safe space to flourish and prosper. Madison continues to build connections within the community to serve a better program for participants. Let's welcome Madeline, Shalani, and Madison.
Aloha, thank you guys for having us. Again, my name is Shalani Plasencia. I'm a peer navigator for Kua Ana Project. We're gonna wait until our screen is presented and then we'll start the presentation. Oh, there you go. We're gonna start presenting. Kua Ana Project. Kua Ana Project has begun since 2015 under Life Foundation. In 2017, when Life Foundation and Child Project merged, in 2017, we known as Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. Kua Ana, what does it mean? It means an older sibling in care of a younger sibling to reach their highest potential. We as also Kua Ana Project, we build leaders who will advocate and give information to their sisterhood and brotherhood. Next slide, please. When you see this slide right here, you will see different pictures. So the first top on the left-hand side, you'll see our beautiful staff of Kua Ana Project. Sina Saison, a peer navigator. We have our program manager, Ms. Madeline Sepasara, and of course you have me and Madison Molinga as your peer navigators that we're presenting here today. On the bottom left-hand side, you'll see our beautiful group of girls. They're known as the Beauty Blossoms. So the Beauty Blossom is our youth group that is from the ages of 16 to 25 years old. And then on the bottom right side, you see the Nphw Kapuna, also known as Makua trans group, our elderly group from 50 to the ages of 50 and up. With our other group that we inspired to become leaders, we're also not known for making leaders here in Hawaii, but also in the other states of the Hawaii chain. And we come together as one group as known as the Ka'amahu leaders, where we bring up issues and topics that affect our trans folks, and we we have a group discussion, and then we bring out information to our own community, and hopefully we come together to stand up to make sure our rights and our voices are heard as a community. With Kuana services, we have direct services. We have peer counseling, smoking cessation, name change, homeless re-engagement, bus passes, along with the disability bus pass, food bank, hygiene, and emergency assistance. I would like to highlight some of the main services that we do as Kuana is our name changes. So with our name change, we give them two options. If they're not in the proper, they don't have enough income to pay for their own name change and gender marker changes, us as Kuana, we will pay for them and do the legwork. All we ask is for 7 hours community service. And the other part of the name change is if in case they can do they can pay, we will do the legwork, and then we'll just take care of that way. Also, we do gender affirming services and linkage to care, which helps with our trans folks dealing with trying to navigate the trans healthcare services. So we do our very best to navigate them to the right areas. And bringing so forth, I'm going to present to the next slide, introducing to another peer navigator. She just recently became our newest employee, and this is Madison Molinga.
Talofa lava, everybody. My name is Madison Molinga, and I am your newest Kuana patient navigator. I'm going to be touching bases on things that we face, issues that we face as the trans community. One of the biggest issues that we face is the lack of knowledge around our transness. And this kind of leads into the types of services that service providers offer, and also just not having that knowledge of how to navigate that transness, or even just to be inclusive towards trans folks. That can be a really big issue for us. Another really big issue that we face as trans folks are receiving gender affirming care. Gender affirming care, when we oftentimes think of this word, lately in the media, we've been hearing really horrible words, or a negative connotation around all of gender affirming care. You hear things like gender affirming care is mutilating the bodies of young children, that gender affirming care is forcing people to do something that they're not willing to do, or but that's not true. When we talk about gender affirming care, we talk about healthcare as a whole for a transgender person. Affirming someone's gender, we'll go into that a little bit later, is one of the most important things that you can do for the trans community. By honoring and respecting their pronouns or their identity allows us to truly be able to navigate through healthcare systems, whether that be going in to see somebody for diabetes, going in to see somebody maybe for mental health issues, right? And the lack of this knowledge and the lack of gender affirming care that is accessible to trans folks creates a really really horrible, really bad, oh my goodness. Oh, and this creates really barriers for our mental health, and it also induces a lot of trauma. And when we speak about trauma within the trans community is not exclusive to some traumas that we feel are only exclusive to women. One of those being intimate partner violence. The statistics tell us that 60% of all transgender individuals experience intimate partner violence, and that number is higher for our unsheltered folks. There's also the trauma around being disowned by our families, that lack of family support system. Within our own community, we've created what's called a chosen family system, and this is our support system. We find other people that will guide us. We have queen mothers, and of course our kua'ana, our older siblings that help guide us and essentially fill in the void that our family has left within us. And another one of our biggest issues is having care homes that are inclusive for our elder trans folks. Our elder population, our elderly population within the trans community is one of the populations that we oftentimes we forget about them. We oftentimes forget that they are here with us still, and when they try and navigate these systems on their own, they oftentimes are experiencing trauma, they're experiencing discrimination, they're experiencing all of these things that we shouldn't really be experiencing at that stage in our lives. We should be able to retire and live comfortably and just flourish. Next slide, please. Some barriers to receiving service. And when we talk about barriers, barriers can mean anything, right? Barriers can, you can have high barriers, medium barriers, and low barriers. But some of the barriers that are kind of specific to trans folks that will cause your transgender client or patient to be not come in for services is because they're feeling like they're judged or they're not understood. The area or the service provider is not inclusive in their language. They're misgendering me often. They're not honoring me as I present, right? Not being addressed as I present. If I stood in front of you, you would clearly see that I'm a woman. But oftentimes, sometimes there are service providers out there that will fully just ignore the fact that there's a woman standing in front of them and identify and misgender a person. Myths kind of tie in with stigma, right? When we think about stigma, we know that stigma kills. We understand that having stigmas around being transgender, sometimes that stigma can actually keep us from receiving the adequate and appropriate services that are provided by all of our wonderful agencies. Limited access, uninsured, and money, right? When we go to the doctor, we have to always make copays. We have to always ensure that our insurance is covering certain procedures or certain things that are required for our care treatment plans, right? But for most of the time, even insurance companies will go as far as limiting that access that we have. Currently, SB 2407 is enacted right now, and it is an anti-discrimination law that that helps insurance companies that make sure that they don't discriminate against us. And one of the ways that they've discriminated against trans folks receiving transgender affirming care is by going off of their BMI. And obviously BMI for a trans woman might be different for the BMI that is a biological woman or a cisgender woman. So we have that limited access. There's that guilt, again, that stigma by association. I don't want to go there because another girlfriend of mine went there and she didn't, she was misgendered. And then last but not least, the lack of training on transgender and non-binary communities. Here at Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, we do offer really great trainings like LGBT cultural humility. We also offer a harm reduction 101 training that's really great. If you folks are all interested, go ahead and hit us up after this training and we can get you connected to our training department. Next slide, please. Tips on providing services. We're all service providers here. And this is kind of essentially the same thing we think about when we're talking about our clients, right? But providing a safe space for someone who is transgender can really save someone's life today. Ensuring that our trans folks are feeling safe enough to ask for services or safe enough to receive services. That is one of the biggest tips that I can give every single service provider on this call. Another really great tip is addressing people by their chosen name and gender. Use their correct pronouns. Oftentimes you'll see in a lot of our organizational emails, it's included there, and you'll see it in our emails these days, which I think is amazing. And that allows us to honor someone's gender identity, whether they're cisgender, transgender, or gender nonconforming. Using people first language. People first language is really important because it gives your person back the power, right? Instead of calling somebody a drug addict, we can call them someone who uses drugs. Instead of referring to someone as someone who is transsexual, transgender, we can say that this is, we can call them by their names, right? We can actually label and give the person back their power. A really great tip is standardized questions, right? Ask everyone every question, even if you know that the person that's sitting in front of you is cisgender heterosexual. Always ask those questions, because sometimes you will come across somebody who may be presenting as a cisgender heterosexual female. But when you find out and you ask every single question on your intake forms, you'll actually find out that this person may actually be a trans man or non-binary, and their pronouns are they, them, right? And by asking these standardized questions, it allows us to be more inclusive to our transgender and gender nonconforming folks. Going with your clients to appointments is really, really vital. If you're able to do so, going with your clients to see other service providers and ensuring that they're not being misgendered or discriminated against is one of the best ways that we can definitely provide a great, adequate service. And last but not least, employing local LGBTQ staff members. Keikoa brought this up earlier, talking about hiring more Native Hawaiians, right? By allowing more Native Hawaiians, more transgender, more LGBT individuals to work in your agencies, this will allow us who are out here on the streets to feel more included, to feel seen, to feel visible. We just recently had Transgender Day of Visibility, and it's so important for us as trans folks to see ourselves in these spaces, because when we see ourselves, we're able to flourish. And that essentially is the job of Kua'ana, is to allow our brothers and sisters, our nieces and nephews, our aunties and uncles to flourish. Next slide, please. So my name is Madison Molinga, and again, this is the beautiful Shalani Placentia. If you or anyone you know are interested in receiving services, transgender social services, feel free to reach us out. If you're on your phones right now, go ahead and screenshot our pictures and save it onto your phone for later use. And again, thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you so much, Jelani and Madison. Now we will have Dr. Mestiza Gass from the Mental Health America of Hawaii. Dr. Gass is a doctor of psychology and is the program director for Mental Health of America of Hawaii. Her education experience has been focused on diverse populations, including inpatient acute adolescent care, community mental health, and military mental health. She is the co-chair for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, Hawaii chapter, a member of the Mental Health Task Force and statewide Suicide Prevention Task Force, and an advisory board member for the Waipahu Aloha Clubhouse. Since 2006, she has been working in Hawaii, being originally from the Appalachian Mountains. Dr. Gass is passionate about bringing education, support, and resources to all community, especially rural areas like those in which she grew up. Let's welcome Dr. Mestiza Gass.
Aloha, and thank you so much. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. So we'll be talking a little bit about building resilience in our youth here in Hawaii. And I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about what we're looking at. And as we all know, it takes a little bit of time for us to get some of that data, but what we have been seeing, especially with some of the newly released information, is that, for example, Hawaii ranks 43rd when we look at the mental health statistics. And when we look at what that means overall, that our youth have a higher prevalence of mental illness and lower rates of access to care. And this is through the Mental Health America National Statistics Database. And we start to talk about access to care, that for Hawaii, that we fall around 42nd, which means our youth do have limited access to getting insurance and also receiving mental health treatment. And those are important things to know. When we look at the Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance System, most people call that the YRBS, we do know that it was recently, just really recently released for 2021. So of course, we're always wanting to get more recent information, but that is the most recent release. And just some of the things that kind of stood out for us is that we were looking at how our students are sleeping. And so, for example, 26.6% of high school students are getting 5 hours or less amount of sleep. And we know that that is for a lot of different reasons, including the fact that quality of sleep overall in the last 2.5 years has gone down nationally and within the state. We also know that our high school students, about 34.8% of them reported that they were experiencing depression that lasted 2 weeks or more in the past 12 months. And so that's moving into more of a clinical experience and needing to get a little bit more of that professional support. We also know for our middle school students, 25.8% of students were reporting that they were engaging in that non-suicidal self-injury. So there's a lot of things that are standing out for us that we need to kind of address. And specifically for suicidality in Hawaii for our youth, when we start to think about whether someone is experiencing ideation, 1 out of 4 middle school students said that they were, and 1 out of 6 high school students endorsed that. Specifically for creating a plan, we had 1 out of 6 middle school students and 1 out of 7 high school students. And for attempts, it was 1 out of 8 middle school students and 1 out of 10 high school students. So those interventions moving into younger ages are really crucial. This is a brief snapshot that kind of looks at deaths within fatal injury. And you'll see for 15 to 29 that year of age range that death by suicide is the leading cause there for fatal injuries in Hawaii by that age group. We also have it for 30 to 44. So it's really important, again, to do those early interventions as soon as possible. Some of the things that we've talked about within the state to be able to help support our youth are looking at legislation, looking at acts that we can kind of build to support the community. And one of those things that happened was in 2019. So Act 270 is a really big pivotal piece here in supporting our youth, especially around suicide prevention. And it basically says that there's a mandatory youth suicide awareness and prevention training that is required within the school systems, especially those that are working with our students, so our teachers, our staff, our administrators, who are required to get the kind of DOE approved suicide prevention trainings. And we'll talk about a couple of those that are available through our organization and also available within the community. But the importance here is that when we talk about youth and we talk about their mental health, we want to make sure that as many people as possible who interact with them, who engage with them, are also being able to assess and make sure that they're safe. And this is one of those things that helps create that. When we started to talk about youth mental health and resiliency, one of the big conversations that happened here at Mental Health America of Hawaii is how do we do that in a really systemic way, which is great because this is a public health place. This is where we talk about public health and mental health. We started to think that it's not just about our youth, it's about the people who support youth, their family, their friends, their peers, and how do we start to touch all those different lives in meaningful ways so that they can be a support and have those same things like crisis resources, mental health literacy, so that our youth have people to talk to. And so we started to think about, well, that's going to happen in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. So we started to look at work. How can we provide support to their parents, their guardians, their caregivers at work so that they have better skills and that they're able to provide that good modeling in terms of mental health to the youth. We started to think about what's happening at home and how can we do that same thing for their family members, but also for themselves that are youth specific. And we'll talk about some of those youth specific trainings in just a few minutes. But we really wanted to make sure that we focused on self-care and coping skills. How do you manage the stress that you're currently feeling? The other thing that we wanted to highlight was the fact that through everything that we've been through and just in general, even minus the last 2.5 years, that something that we don't talk about enough is the healing aspects. And so we wanted to make sure that people were aware of the fact that people are experiencing, especially youth in complex trauma, disrupted grief, and that there are things that can be supportive of that, including having good grief literacy, including learning good interventions to be able to support them in meaningful ways. And the ways that youth get supported can be very individualized. And so creating as many avenues into that was really important for us. When we look at suicide prevention, suicide prevention, just through our organization, one of the things that we were seeing just trending wise was, for example, that we were getting a lot of requests for those Suicide Prevention 101 that does meet a standard for Act 270, as well as the mental health first aids. And we thought that we were seeing quite a high number of requests in 2020 and 2021, that we were delivering those at a high rate at 2022, but I will go ahead and let you know that when we looked at, for example, that second bar, which is youth mental health first aid, in 2022, we were able to train 144 people who support youth and who work with youth in our community. And in the last just 3 months, we have trained 118. So we are having a lot more requests and a lot more people who work with youth wanting to make sure that they have that literacy, which is a wonderful thing. And for our adult mental health first aid in 2022, we had 100 people trained, and already this year we've trained 176. So mental health is going to be on the forefront, and that's a wonderful thing in terms of resiliency and support. We talked about the specific trainings that are available, especially when we start to look at Act 270, and the Youth Suicide and Bullying Prevention is one of those programs that we have here in-house, and that is free for people to be able to request and have done within the Department of Education. We created it in 2008 for middle schoolers and high schoolers. We even have a train-the-trainer so that people can learn it, get comfortable with it, but also use it within their complexes without having to have us come to their site, which is really important. We also made it a little bit younger in terms of introducing things like social emotional learning with positive emotions and difficult emotions and that self-care piece down to about 4th grade. And that's our Become a Defender. We also started to think about the importance of those coping skills for our teenagers and wanting them to really focus and hone in on a place to be able to practice those. And that's our self-care for youth. We want to make sure that throughout those presentations that we're able to get a clarity in the language that's being used, that we look at those warning signs and we talk about early intervention, and we talk about how protective factors can really help mediate that, and overall how to be a good friend and a good support to someone who may be struggling, and who to contact who's an adult in case someone is and you need that additional support. So the other courses that we provide, of course, that's that YSBP in 2022, over 1,000 youth were trained there for our self-care for youth. That's our coping skills again. We are over 1,300. And then of course our youth mental health in Hawaii. So you can see that the number of youth that are starting to get involved in the trainings and be interested in it is increasing. And it does fluctuate from year to year, depending upon what we're seeing and what the requests are. Some of our outcomes, just to kind of be mindful of the programming, is that for all of the islands that we were able to bring YSBP to, that there was an overall increase in knowledge and understanding, which is great. Again, there's your literacy at 38.9%. We also saw that there was an understanding about bullying prevention and suicide prevention, that we had an increase in the list of tools that they could use. So there's that wonderful resiliency when we talk about self-care. We also were able to help them see that there was negative outcomes to stress and anxiety so that they could have that insight to be able to make those changes, and that they knew that there are ways to get help if they were not okay, and to be able to start to reduce that stigma to say, like, it's okay to not be okay, and here's where we go, and here's some of those resources. In 2022, we saw that same increase in that knowledge and understanding. We had a lot of people who youth completed the YSBT training, and they were able to identify those big pieces like the types of bullying, the roles that they can play in helping to support another youth, and also those risk factors that we're looking for and the resources. And that was up to 78.5%. So again, we're seeing those really high rates of return here at that 78.7%. Utilizing those tools, the 81.4, knowing the negative outcomes, the 76.4, knowing that there are ways that they can feel better if they utilize that great self-care, and that 83.3, knowing what the resources are that they can use. So it's one of the reasons that we really promote and support that YSBP program. So that looks a little bit about what we do here in the community, but let's talk about why we do it. It's really important when we talk about youth to think about it in terms of de-siloing mental health. I come from a very strong mental health background. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I think the one thing that I learned moving into systems work, moving into public health, was that we gatekeep mental health tools and resources a little bit, and sometimes unbeknownst to ourselves, unintentionally. So things that are really helpful here is to talk about advocacy and policy making to make sure that we're involved in different task forces to see what other people are doing, so we're not replicating in a way that is not making sense in utilizing and helping our youth, that we are training at different levels of intervention, including with the students, the school staff, the community members and the family members so that we're getting all that great support for the youth and that we're partnering in ways that make sense so that we are becoming stronger as nonprofits, stronger as organizations and businesses that support youth instead of, again, pulling away and doing that siloing effect. When we thought about for our organization what those partnerships and collaborations will look like, we started to get very strategic about making sure that we were supporting organizations where our youth go, where they are having points of contact. So that for us was the Hawaii Public Library, Kaiser Permanente's School Rise program with Alliance for a Healthier Generation, PBS with their amazing Hikino program, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Hawaii chapter. 4-H, we look at Healing Gardens, our friends at NAMI Hawaii, the YMCA Kalihi and their after-school programs, and of course, the other community trainings that we continue to build. And that is a small section and selection of our partnerships and collaborations that we work with. And we're always open to continue to build those to make sure that we support in as much ways as we can. So when we're working with youth, I think the big thing to think about is systems. What are we going to do in the community that helps support our youth? So those could be those community trainings. When we talk about families and caregivers, we know that we want to support them in having the great self-care they can model, but also being able to be aware of the fact that there's going to have to be after-school programs for some of our youth, and we need to be able to reach that there as well. Within the schools and classrooms, we want to support the teachers, the staff, and make sure that they get that great mental health literacy and suicide prevention literacy as well. And that could be through a number of different trainings. We also are going to look outside of that at practices, policies, and think about things like legislation, advocacy. So what task forces will we join? What acts will we really support and promote? And then when we look at partnerships, really think about creative ones that could bring a greater awareness of mental health and destigmatize things and to find youth where they currently are. That's a lot of information in a very short amount of time, but we always want to make sure that we cover as much as we can and to let you know if you have questions about our youth programs. You can find us in a lot of different places, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. If you want a copy of this presentation, it will be made available to you so you can have the PDF and you can be able to follow up with that. If you have questions about some of those things that we're doing or want to reach out to us, this is our website, mentalhealthhawaii.org. Our email, you can reach out to us if you're interested in training or collaborating or working on that de-siloing and advocacy at that info@mentalhealthhawaii.org. You can call us at Oahu or our Maui County office. And we do have screenings available, which is fantastic. And there is a youth screener there so that they can take it 24/7 anonymous and get some really fantastic recommendations for maybe some of the things that they're experiencing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Goss. As always, wonderful job. Wonderful job to all of our panelists for today. Let me pull up my introductory slide. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Martinez. I am the training program manager for Mental Health America of Hawaii, but also the HPHA Programs Committee co-chair, along with Brian Talisayan, who is our executive director, and he will have some parting words for us at the closing. But I'm super excited to launch this Q&A session for our panel, and it just so happens to work out that we have at least one question for each of you all. So I appreciate it, those of you who were able to drop in your questions. The first questions, if I could maybe ask my panel to come back on the screen so we can see your wonderful faces, and I'll spotlight you all really quickly. Awesome. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you so much for your insights and your presentations for today. So my first question is going to be for Kekoa and Raymond. I loved that you had a solutions focused portion of your presentation, because I think that's something that we're always kind of looking for, right? When we do events like this or we hear presentations, like we're always, of course, want to be aware of the things that we want to look out for and be aware of, but what can we do about it, right? That's one of the most important questions we ask in public health, is the so what or the now what. So the first question is, since you had that slide on those really awesome kind of solutions as starting points, where can public health professionals or people working within the public health field go to find out more information about how to start implementing those?
That's a good question. So shameless plug, like H3RC does have a training department that can help with, I guess, sort of building capacities of service providers. And I think it really depends, right? There are people who are working at different organizations doing different things who can certainly help build those competencies pretty broadly. I think it's kind of hard to say because like public health is so broad, right? And the different types of disease events or different things that we're trying to address can vary so greatly. I really think it starts with understanding that population and then finding other people who are working in the field to come together to brainstorm solutions. Like the program that started here at H3RC, I'm not entirely sure, but it started with an idea, right? With an idea and among people who work there. And I think that we are resourced and resourceful enough that we can do that. Yeah, I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, I know it was kind of a larger question that I threw at you right off the bat, right? Raymond, did you have any thoughts for that one too?
It's really, that's the one thing I really admire about working with people, because when he showed me the slides, one of the things that popped out was, we always have data that's coming out, and we have ideas that come up, but offering a solution to it a lot of times is kind of falls to the wayside. I think it's changing, but I think that was a really good way of keeping the conversation going, keeping it open for other people to kind of contribute their ideas. So yeah, I want to thank Kiko for doing it that way.
And can I do want to add, thank you, Raymond.
Yeah.
Like if we're trying to figure out like what population, right? So for Kanakamali specifically, right? So if you're trying to develop like an intervention or a program in a specific, like for mental health, for example, you're trying to build a Native Hawaiian program for mental health. I would reach out to agencies like Papa Ola Lokahi or to OHA or yeah, like agencies like that where people are already doing work for Kanakamali communities and find out where the overlap is, and maybe there's an opportunity to partner because resources are very often limited, right? And a lot of times we're fighting for a lot of the same funding, so maybe we don't have to duplicate services or find ways to avoid that. But I think that there are always people out there. Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, thank you, Kelly. That's another great resource. There are people doing work, and if we just find the partners in the community who are doing similar work, I think that we can really effectively build programs together.
That's so wonderful. I completely agree. So I know that public health is kind of a broad subject, and we had a wider range of topics for today's event, but I'm hearing commonalities and common themes all throughout, right? And it's systems work. It's for any prevention effort to be effective and sustainable, it has to happen on multiple levels, right? And collaborations. The only way we can make sure it's happening on multiple levels is if we are working with each other, right? So my next question, if I can make this transition, is for our Cool Honor Project folks. Collaborations and working together and supporting each other is super important. So I think this is a really great question that was proposed by a participant. Said, how can I support a friend or family member who is looking to transition?
Hi, thank you so much. So I think it kind of circles back to what we spoke about in our portion of the presentation about creating safe spaces, right? Creating safe space is so vital, especially when it comes to our trans and non-gender conforming folks, because our identities are strictly our own. So we try our best to navigate it as much as we can on our own, But if your child comes out to you and says this to you, it's fair to also let your child know that you're learning as well, right? Especially if you have a non-judgmental attitude towards your child's identity and you are accepting of it. And even if you aren't aware of the community that they are about to embark and be a part of, there's great ways to learn. Like I mentioned earlier, our agency offers really great training tools on how to speak in these spaces, how to create safe spaces for our trans youth, and especially our trans youth right now. It is so vital to protect them in this space today because there are so many anti-trans legislation being introduced all across the nation. And I heard one of these trans kids spoke at in this space and said that when trans adults thrive, trans children survive. So it's really important, again, like I said, to create these safe spaces, create knowing how to use pronouns. If you don't know how to honor your child's pronouns, talk story with them. Let them know, hey, so are your pronouns he, him, or your pronouns are she, her, right? Finding out what they identify as or how they're feeling, or even if you don't know how to navigate them, there are so many people. There's great service providers like us here at the Kua'ana Project who can help guide you and navigate you all together as a family unit. Because essentially keeping families together is what's really going to allow the trans community to survive.
Tackling on to what Madison was saying was, your child is coming up to you, letting you know that they're feeling different. So they're making that safe space already, and they're knowing that your relationship with them is strong, right? And so even if you don't know how to navigate with them, you let them know that, hey, let's take this journey together. You don't know, I don't know, let's work it out and let's find out places where we can thrive as one, and be more supportive that way. Just know that we're walking together as one.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so powerful what you said, Madison. That really got me. When trans adults thrive, then trans children survive. I'm gonna file that nugget away to hold in my heart. Absolutely. Thank you both so much for your insight. I think it's, we talk about in our professional capacity, right, within public health, how can we help provide that kind of support and stuff? But sometimes that translates over into our personal lives as well, right? And how can we apply the skills and information or learn and pass along resources that we're learning and working within in our professional capacity into our personal lives, or to people who we know may be benefiting, right, from wonderful resources like the Kua'ana Project. So wonderful. I cannot wait to refer you as a resource far and wide. You are doing the important work for our trans youth and trans folks here in Hawaii. So it sounds like, that kind of peer support, collaborations, working together is important. So Dr. Goss, do you know of any kind of opportunities for peer-to-peer connections to happen in regards to either programs or just individually specifically to youth to be able to support each other when it comes to their mental health?
That's a great question. I would say that, I'm not super familiar with all of the different types of things that are available. I know that there are programs out there, for example, like the Youth Suicide and Bullying Prevention Program, where it is really about training the youth to be able to support the youth. And that's really what you want to have happen, is to build those platforms and opportunities for them to learn the skills that will work between them. Because in the reality, we always want to say, like, talk to a trusted adult, but who they spend the most time with is actually their same aged peers. And if the first person that they talk to happens to be a youth who does not have that same kind of literacy in mental health or in suicide prevention, then that's unsafe for both of those youth. And so we really want to make sure that we are providing those platforms. And I do think there needs to be more, but there are specific trainings, including the ones that we provide. There are places that people can go, the youth, to be able to connect with one another. One of the places that our organization supports Disability Cafe, which is an amazing place for LGBTQ youth to be able to go and to talk in a space that is crafted and created by them for them, because I think that adults have a lot of really wonderful ideas about what youth like and we don't know. We actually don't really know what they like and what they're into now. And so that's one of those things I think that absolutely needs to grow. And those are places that you can go kind of get connected, learn about additional resources. We have other youth who are creating things like nonprofits, that's Chats in Hawaii to support teens who stutter. There are so many things happening within our youth becoming advocates and leaders in mental health. And we really want to spotlight that for them. And so it really depends on what specific areas or types of programming that you're looking for. We definitely have a mental health youth council here that works with our legislators to kind of put out that big piece of what are we pushing and promoting, what do we think is most important for youth, which is our youth summit piece that happens here in the state. But anytime that we can continue to build that platform and give them the seat at the table and the platform to speak about youth concerns is when we have done what we needed to do, because we can then step away and really learn from them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goss. I think that was perfectly put, and it kind of loops back into what Kiko was mentioning earlier, like when you're trying to design a program or implement something that's specific to a community, it makes sense that you want to talk to members of that community and sit back and listen instead of us kind of coming in and saying, this is what you need to do, this is going to work, right? And kind of imposing our biases, our ideals, what we think may what that community may need. Sometimes we do have to sit back and listen. And it's so encouraging to hear that there are youth advocates within our communities who are stepping up and creating these safe spaces in multiple areas, right? And supporting each other, but also that we as supportive adults are providing that space for youth to share their stories and have their voices be heard on higher levels too, right? And helping to pass legislation and pass bills and laws that help promote increased access to all types of services, right, that our communities may need to promote that health. So I think that was wonderful answers from all of you, that there was just kind of commonalities threading throughout that. So thank you for making my job as a Q&A moderator a lot easier. I appreciate that. We got a few minutes left in the Q&A section. I don't see any other ones that popped in. So I want to give you all the opportunity to have a closing remark for everyone who is on this Zoom webinar with us today. Why don't we go ahead and loop back, start with Kikoa and Raymond.
I really just want to end with gratitude. I wanna thank you folks for allowing us to share about our programs. Kanaka Maoli voices are often not elevated to where they need to be in order to address a lot of our concerns. And I know that I spoke a lot about HIV, but I also want to acknowledge that Kanaka Maoli are disproportionately affected by almost every single health occurrence that exists out there in many different ways: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and it's all around. And so I just want to mahalo you for giving me the space to share a little bit about our little corner that we work in. So mahalo.
Raymond, any closing remark you'd like to? You can say no. I'm sorry, I'm putting you
I'm
on the
just,
spot.
no, I think it's, just being embracing. I think, especially in this time, we just look around and this whole country, this whole world is just so non-embracing. And I think, for us to really start embracing and just making sure that the people around us are doing okay, and which means the cultures that we have here, and stay in humility. We can never be competent. We always we will be in humility though. So embrace.
Beautifully put. Thank you. How about Madison and Shalani?
I would like to say thank you, everybody, for having us speak of our program here today. And also reflecting back what Keiko has said, that us as Mahu, we also have a place, right, culturally, so here. And so letting everybody know that, in case you have friends, family members that are going through this little rough patch and transitioning and stuff, reach out to your local organizations that does help with trans services and help them guide the way as well. And we're people too. We deserve equal rights as well. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted to come on here and just piggyback off of what Shalani just said. Trans rights are human rights, and it is so important in today's political, just in today, period, right? We have to understand that giving people their rights is, honoring their rights is just the best way that we can really heal our entire country. How can we do that by today? We can just honor people, honor them, honor who they are. And you know what? I honor every single one of you who have listened to the sound of my voice today. And I hope that these words will reign true in your minds and in your hearts and in your souls so that you can provide excellent, adequate services to your people.
Thank you both. Dr. Gus?
Absolutely. I definitely echo all of the sentiments shared and would just like to say that I hope that as everyone leaves today, that the seed that they carry with them is one of hope, that despite all the challenges we've talked about, that there's so much amazing work being done in the community. It really speaks to the resiliency of it and how much work is being done there. And so that is where the hope lies, is that all these amazing people and connections and resiliency is being built within our community overall.
Beautifully put, every single one of you. Thank you so much. And for that Q&A panel, for your questions from the participants, it is my honor now to pass this virtual mic over to Brian Talisayan, who is our HPHA president-elect, for our closing remarks for today.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Brian Talisayan. Like she said, I'm the executive director here at Mental Health America of Hawaii and president-elect for the Hawaii Public Health Association. And I really want to thank our speakers again for this engaging and very critical conversation. I love that we're able to look at and talk about culture through a broader lens, understanding that culture is the root of and core of who we are, how we live, how we thrive, and how we connect. I don't want to take up much time because I want the lasting impression of this event to be the speakers and their messages that we just learned. I do know that there's going to be a follow-up email with the slides, some of the slides at least included in that, probably sometime next week. Mahalo to you, Jan, as our 2023 Student Fellow. You did an amazing job today. If any of you are a current public health student and are interested in the fall opportunity, the deadline to apply is April 30th. Fellows are given a $500 cash stipend, and this opportunity is open to all undergraduate and graduate students enrolled at Chaminade University, Hawaii Pacific University, or any one of the University of Hawaii campuses. I'm going to pop a link in the chat to where you can go and apply if you're interested. Also, the Hawaii Public Health Association cannot do its work without the generous support of our sponsors and friends. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge them again. Aloha Care, University of Hawaii's John A. Burns School of Medicine, Chaminade University School of Nursing and Health Professionals, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction, Hawaii Public Health Institute, Hawaii Pacific University, Papa'ololakahi, University of Hawaii's Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health. If you're not currently a member of the HPHA, please visit our website at hawaiipublichealth.org and click on the membership tab, where you'll find a variety of membership opportunities for individuals and organizations. I'm going to put the link to that site in the chat as well. And finally, please, you'll get this link in the email next week, but please complete the evaluation. This is how we know what opportunities we have to improve upon the program. And with that, I send you all home 2 minutes early. Thank you for joining us. Aloha.